This is where we're from, and this is where we belong from the beginning of time, since Yakwimit, forever.
This is the story of the life and death of a great river, Huu-ay-aht, the heart of our people. Since the beginning of time, the Huu-ay-aht River has flowed through this land. It has fed many peoples, and the Huu-ay-aht have fought wars defending the river and its resources. Today, we are fighting a new battle to bring the river back to life. It's a conflict where sides no longer matter, and if we pull together, everyone wins.
Okay? Okay?
In the past, millions of salmon returned to the mouth of the river each year, and according to custom, our families allowed many fish to pass by our traps and spears to spawn further up the river. We saw the fish as gifts from the Creator, and we wanted to ensure that our future generations would never go hungry. Today, the river is simply called Sarita, a name derived from the Spanish explorers who mapped this territory in the late 1700s. To our people, it was known as Huu-ay-aht, meaning white with the sperm of salmon. Less than 50 years ago, it was not unusual for so many salmon to travel up the mouth of the Sarita that the waters would boil white as they began to spawn.
The Sarita village was the main village of the Huu-ay-aht people, and this was their fishing area. Numakim is the name today. And the very last part of enjoying catching salmon out here was around 1954, 55.
This is part of the Huu-ay-aht, the Sarita River. This used to be another spot that our people used to live and do fish. And as you can see, there's nothing now, not even a fish. And we don't even see a dead carcass or anything to show that the fish have spawned. The only thing that we've seen is the few seagulls that were flying around earlier. Maybe we might find one fish somewhere. It used to be really wide here. It used to be a big river. And, you know, it's just a lot of changes from a long time ago.
When Mac Blow started cutting the trees off of the mountains, the Huu-ay-ahts would tell them to leave a little strip along the river here, Sarita River, so that all what's coming down, the silt and what's coming down off of the mountains wouldn't get into the river and spoil the river for the fish. But the logging companies did whatever they wanted to do.
We've always known that logging, which began here in the 1930s, was largely responsible for killing off the salmon in our river. In fact, studies conducted by forest management companies have pointed to clear-cut logging as the major culprit in altering the flow of water in the Sarita.
1987, the Huu-ay-aht people contacted us to help them with what is called a cutoff claim. There were reserves that during about the turn of the century or early 1900s in what was called the McKenna-McBride Commission that were reduced in size or cut off. Sometimes whole reserves were removed. And the federal government eventually agreed to settle these claims with indigenous nations. Involved in the settlement of those claims was the need to assess the losses to the indigenous people. What I saw in the Sarita River is something very typical of what you can find in clear-cut based logging systems around the world. If you clear-cut one patch of trees in the watershed and continuously crop it for timber, what you do is get rid of or lose important composition and structure or parts of the forest that are necessary to keep a fully functioning ecosystem. And the most obvious parts that you lose are the large old trees, the large standing dead trees or snags, and the fallen trees on the forest floor. And during logging, many of those large old trees that serve as Mother Nature's water storage and filtration system got smashed apart. The problem in the Sarita River drainage basin is that it was virtually all clear-cut. And when you clear-cut that forest, you remove the forest's ability to absorb and hold water, both in the crowns of the trees and in the decaying wood that's found in the forest. So instead of being held in that forest and slowly released into the system, when it rains, that water now pours off the hillside, carrying with it everything from boulders the size of this room to fine particles like sand, silt, and clay. And if you're a fish, you can't swim there anymore, so the whole system becomes degraded.
This was the greenest place in my whole lifetime that I lived at. And there was trees, there was no logging at that point. There was a patch here and a patch there, but there was no proper caretaking after the logging that they got. So the river changed, the food supply changed, the structure of the river itself, the physical structure of the river itself has changed drastically.
The gravel we see here did not move down from further up the river. It came down from the mountainsides, like where the roads were built. That's where this gravel and boulders are washed down from. And plenty of it, and then it's building up in the riverbeds. And it's really changed. It really saddens my feeling to see the way it is today.
This is where we caught our fish. This is how we lived. And the sad part for me is we can't live here anymore. We used to be able to live here. You know, our garden was this river. And now we got no more garden. Can't get our fish anymore. But there used to be smokehouses all along the banks. People would have smokehouses up and down this river. And now we don't even have one.
My late husband used to go way up in a canoe, a place called Klitsnit. He took 2 hours before the road. He used to go fishing way up and get steelheads. And I was ready to start cutting. There was so much fish in those days. It's just a sad thing that it's gone now. We don't see a thing going at the river there. I go through there a lot, going to Port Alberni, looking down, you know, see if there's a splash of fish. Not a thing.
What had been started in the 1930s with Trans-Pacific Company, a Japanese-owned firm, was picked up after the war by BC timber giant Bloedel, Stewart and Welsh. The declared purpose of the Sarita timber harvest was the culling of trees hit by a beetle infestation, or hemlock looper. One of the largest logging camps in North America was created at Sarita in the late 1940s to quickly and expediently harvest what was perceived as wasteful timber in a dying forest.
You talk about insects like the hemlock looper. There's this interesting word that foresters have developed for insects and fungi in the forest. The forestry profession and the logging profession calls them pests, quote unquote. Well, that labels them in a way that gives the impression that they're a big problem as opposed to a natural part of the forest. So pests have always been a euphemism for logging. And the hemlock looper in the Sarita River likely did several things that were very advantageous to logging companies. First of all, it made them able to circumvent whatever regulations existed during that time to control logging and any damage that logging might do. So virtually all the rules kind of got put aside because there was this emergency, this pest attack. And the other thing that happens with pest attacks or salvaging losses, quote unquote, from a forest is that you pay minimum stumpage. So the price that they would have paid for that wood, which is probably some of the highest quality wood in the world that ever grew in this province, would have been maybe 25 cents a meter or less, as opposed to many times that if the wood had not been affected by insects.
Oh, we lived there right on the road. We lived there right close to, we had our houses in the front and they made a road right on the reserve. They even chased us out.
Who chased you out?
Bloedels. Out of our own reserve. We were in the way. We lived with Chief Louis and my late husband. The Bloedels came, they're shoving gravel around the house. We had to get out of there. I wish I could talk to them today and tell them what they did to us. You know how much they gave us to get out of there, wreck the house? $1,000. And $100 for the smokehouse we had. I think we were the only ones that was in the way, so they got us out of there.
Logging is only part of the story at Sarita. As early as 1913, our hereditary chief, Chief Louis, expressed his concern to government officials about overfishing in Sarita Bay.
When we fish from our canoes and small boats. We use hand lines